Hey, welcome in. Well, who's checking the fact checkers? I guess we are. So we're going to look at a fact check by Snopes around this story. But first, let's take a look at what it's about. Mother of Officer Sicknick confirms media got cause of death wrong. He wasn't hit on the head. Now, this is regarding the officer whom, during the riot at the Capitol on the 6th, was claimed that he was hit on the head with a fire extinguisher, and this was widely reported. This was even used at the second impeachment of Trump. And it turns out this was all wrong. And there was no reason to believe it in the first place. It just was a good narrative. It was a narrative that the media liked. So what's the story here? The mother of Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick said in an interview with Daily Mail that her son was not beaten with a fire extinguisher, but likely suffered a stroke. Quote, "He wasn't hit on the head, no. We think he had a stroke, but we don't know anything for sure." That's what his mother, Gladys Sicknick, said. Continuing, we'd love to know what happened. Now keep in mind, this was used to stoke up the insane levels of paranoia after the 6th. This was absolutely capitalized on for political gain and to basically ramp up the anger and paranoia, basically just to stoke the flames. Shortly after the Capitol riot on January 6, the New York Times reported, based on anonymous sources. Anonymous sources, huh? I mean, how could something based on anonymous sources end up being wrong, huh? That Sicknick was beaten to death with a fire extinguisher. What did the paper write? Pro-Trump supporters overpowered Mr. Sicknick, 42, and struck him in the head with a fire extinguisher, according to two law enforcement officials. And of course, this is the New York Times, and they have since issued a correction to the story weeks later, very quietly. The report was picked up uncritically, always uncritically, by other major news outlets who did not bother to confirm the legitimacy of the Times reporting. Well, that's done now. Like, that doesn't happen in journalism anymore, at least not in, like, mainstream journalism, like the institutional journalism, Washington Post, New York Times. They don't do that. Apparently, they don't know how to use Google. But anyway, the story of him being beaten with a fire extinguisher was even presented as fact in former President Donald Trump's second impeachment trial. Let's see, Sicknick's brother also disputed the widely disseminated story about his death. Quote, "He texted me last night and said, 'I got pepper sprayed twice, and he was in good shape,'" the brother stated. Now, certainly pepper spray could cause bad health effects, absolutely. But that wasn't the claim. The claim was a physical attack with a fire extinguisher. Just going to interrupt for 1 second to say, if you like this content, subscribe so you can see more. Thanks a lot. So anyway, to continue, Sicknick was not given an autopsy, and his body showed no indicators of blunt trauma. Medical examiners are still yet to release an official report on his cause of death. So they don't even really know how he died. So with no facts, New York Times runs out and spreads I'll be careful with my wording. Something that wasn't true, right? And they apparently had no reason to believe it was true. I guess except their anonymous sources, right? And then that was disseminated all over the media to give really a very false impression. And again, this was used politically. This was used as a political weapon. It says, while multiple members of Congress, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, have called for the so-called killers of Sicknick to be brought to justice, no charges have been leveled against anyone in connection to his death, which doesn't seem surprising when you consider they don't know how he died. Exactly, according to this. So anyway, what would Snopes do? I guess Snopes, they're the fact checkers. So I guess they would probably have something to say about this because this is their job, right? They're supposed to check these things. Let's see. And this doesn't seem like good grammar to me. It says, the headline from Snopes, did U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick die after hit with a fire extinguisher? I would have written it like, die after being hit with a fire extinguisher. I wouldn't write it, die after hit with fire extinguisher. That doesn't seem like good English to me. Maybe I'm just an idiot. Who knows? Officials and news outlets have walked back initial reports about his death. Well, because it wasn't true? Is that why they're walking it back? Claim, U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick died after being struck, there it is, being struck with a fire extinguisher during pro-Trump Capitol riot on January 6th. And here, this is very interesting. Origin. Why no rating on this article? I wonder why. I wonder why they didn't give it a true or a false. This is a trending topic, but has not yet been rated by Snopes for reason we'll outline below. You know what's really interesting? You know what's really interesting about that statement? Is that they don't do that. They don't. Okay? And we'll go through it. They don't give reasons why they're not rating it. It's just that it was such a good narrative for them. They loved it. We know that Snopes is politically partisan. It's obvious. I've done other fact checks, quote unquote fact checks from Snopes before. They typically contradict themselves within their own fact check. It's quite amazing to see. But, I mean, it's, I think, fairly transparent why they don't rate this, because it was such a good narrative for them. And it's just so hard to give that up. So let's just not rate it. No, well, let's not say. I mean, it's not true, but wouldn't it be great if it were? I mean, that's how demented these sites are. The fact checkers, the people that are trusted to fact check for us. Oh, dear. So let's see. On January 8th, 2021, the New York Times reported that U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick succumbed to injuries sustained during his on-duty efforts to protect the Capitol from a violent mob of pro-Trump supporters. Well, they claimed he was hit with a fire extinguisher, is what they said. But anyway, the latter stormed the building in an effort to stop Congress from formalizing the electoral win of former President Donald Trump's political rival, blah, blah, blah. Yes, that doesn't matter. What about the claim? Citing two unnamed law enforcement sources, that's their anonymous sources, the Times initially reported that Sicknick was, quote, struck with a fire extinguisher. But on February 16th, 2021, the Times updated the story to note that those sources may not have provided accurate information. So it wasn't true. Okay, so they may have told them something that wasn't true, and then I guess they may have just published that and disseminated it across all of the media. So law enforcement officials initially said Mr. Sicknick was struck with a fire extinguisher, but weeks later, police sources and investigators were at odds over whether he was hit. Medical experts have said that he did not die of blunt force trauma, according to one law enforcement official. Let's see. So that's the update there. The Times story update resulted in a round of stories about it, which seems perfectly reasonable, doesn't it? Considering that they were spreading false information, primarily in right-leaning outlets. Oh, well, then, I mean, can't we just pretend it was true? Because, I mean, right-leaning outlets were talking about it, and that's just suspect, isn't it? I mean, just foundationally, that's suspect. But anyway, quote, New York Times quietly updates story that spreads now debunked claim about police officer Brian Sicknick's death, a headline on the Blaze website reported. So the Blaze had a headline that was correct, and they're a right-leaning outlet. I can just see why they refused to rate this. It's because they just want it to be true. Can it be true? I mean, the Blaze had a headline about this that's totally true, and that's not good. We don't like the Blaze. Anyway. Let's see, it says no further details about the circumstances of Sicknick's death have been forthcoming from official sources as of this writing. So on January 7th, the next day, keeping in mind that still there's been no autopsy done, right? The Capitol Police issued a news release stating Sicknick, quote, was injured while physically engaging with protesters and passed away at 9:30 the following day due to injuries sustained while on duty. Except they don't even know that. And again, that was the next day. It says here that he collapsed after returning to his division office the day of the assault, was taken to hospital where sadly he passed away the following night. See, it states here his death was being investigated by the Metropolitan Police Department, Capitol Police, federal law enforcement. As of this writing, authorities have announced no suspects or arrests in connection with Sicknick's death. That might tell you something. Let's see, it says here they reached out to the MPD, who said there's no further information available. Let's see, here it says authorities have reviewed video and photographs that show Sicknick engaging with rioters amid the siege, but have yet to identify a moment in which he suffered his fatal injuries. Law enforcement officials familiar with the matter said, again, so a lack of evidence there. Let's see, according to one, this is from CNN here, according to one law enforcement official, medical examiners did not find signs that the officer sustained any blunt force trauma. So investigators believe that early reports that he was fatally struck by a fire extinguisher are not true. Okay. So let's go back to this. Why no rating on this article? Again, it's kind of a mystery at this point, isn't it? It's kind of a mystery. Because here's the claim. U.S. Capitol Police Officer Brian Sicknick died after being struck with a fire extinguisher during the pro-Trump Capitol riot on January 6, 2021. Pretty straightforward. He didn't. The answer is he didn't. That's the answer, right? They admit it in this fact check, right? But no rating. Still no rating. And for reasons that they'll outline below, which they do not do. Let's see, it says here, I guess this is their justification here. There isn't enough information from official sources available at this time to state either way what the cause and manner of Sicknick's death was, or what mechanisms contributed to it. We will continue this story with further information when it becomes available, except we do know that it wasn't a fire extinguisher. That's the claim. That's the claim they're supposed to be fact-checking. Yes, you can talk about bear spray. Did that have some effect? Okay? That's not the claim. The claim is fire extinguisher. It's been established. There is no reason to believe so. And then at the end here, they just talk about how there were other police officers who were injured, some seriously. It's coming from Snopes. Is that even true? Is that? Did the New York Times report on it? If they did, why would we believe what they say? I mean, this last part is just, well, but it's still bad that it was still bad. Right-wingers are still bad, So even though we didn't rate this, even though it's obvious that it was a false claim, that we admit it was a false claim in this, and then give this incredibly weak stuff here at the end about, well, I could have, maybe. Okay, these are the fact checkers. Congratulations, Snopes. It's so obvious. It's so transparent what this is. How do these people sleep at night? This is shameful. Again, this isn't the first Snopes fact check that I've done. I've done a couple before, and they don't seem to change. Nothing seems to embarrass them. Anyway, that's all I got to say about that. Please subscribe, like, and share. That really helps me out. If you just like to listen, there's the podcast Radio Baloney. It's on pretty much every platform. If you look for it, you will find it. Thanks a lot. I'll see you next time.